So Doug, I'm nice to see you. First, nice to see you. Thank you for being on the podcast this week. Jessica is out today.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure that the first thing you're going to ask me is about my new T-shirt. You can't really say it because the microphone's on. Little Bia.
Okay. And there's big red letters beneath it that I can't see.
Actually, there's a plate of fish.
Oh, got it. Okay.
But I don't know if you know this, but in Spain, during the week, every restaurant has a menú del día. And basically, it's this set menu with first course, second course, either dessert or coffee, and then you get wine and bread. And so it's my favorite thing in the world because they're always really cheap and delicious. And I just randomly found this T-shirt in a big box store here in America the other day.
Really?
It's a menú del día. So.
Oh, I love it. They have this in Portugal too, don't they? Kind of a common thing.
Yeah. So it's like and I think in other places in Europe too, but in Spain it's classic. It's great food, and since we were just saying that you and I always talk about food together,
we do. Food and wine, yes.
So, speaking of food, did you have any good food in Washington D.C. because you just got back?
Well, I did. It was good to be, I covered the White House and Capitol Hill and the federal government in general for 6 years. And I don't know, I think I've been back once since I was like a long time ago. So it was kind of good to be back and be around all these people who are so in the weeds with lobbying and all the rest of the stuff. And we did, most of what I had was your typical conference type fare, here's the little chafing dish of chicken and rice and whatever. But I did go out. I had two crab cakes one night. And as a former DC person and a former Baltimore person, very happy to always eat crab. That's for sure.
That sounds amazing. Yeah, I get excited when I go to the East Coast. But I was actually, you were in DC. I was in California and also in Northern California for another event and got some oysters, which was amazing. I love oysters, and a crab roll, that Dungeness crab. Oh, so good.
Yeah.
So good. So
wow.
Maybe we can have a East Coast, West Coast food face off.
Yeah, that would be interesting, wouldn't it? I mean, I like the Dungeness. Even though I spent a long time in Baltimore, I'm from Philly, where it's all blue crab. The Dungeness is just a better crab. I mean, it's much more meat to it. Just fighting where on crab, just one that got more meat,
So you were in DC, of course, for Organic Week.
Correct.
How was that?
Organic Week I had never been before, and it was very engaging. It was sort of effervescent with enthusiasm and just ideas. And, there's a lot going on. And I think one of my takeaways was sort of a big picture thing is the Organic Week has sort of underscored that, organic continues to mature as a regulated sector, but it's still trying to honor its roots, and its roots are sort of values-driven movement, far removed from just the talk of regulatory stuff. So that was kind of interesting. There's sort of a lot of people talked about how we got to stay true to our roots, yet we also fortunately dwell within this very unique regulated structure. And so there was just an ongoing kind of struggle to try to keep things lively while also working within a highly regulated sector.
Well, and the roots, just talking about the OTA, this is a big year for the OTA, right? So Organic Trade Association, was this their 30th anniversary or 40th?
I think it was 40th.
I was going to say, you just wrote an article.
I did. I said what the anniversary was.
You wrote an article and I edited it. So
it was 2 days ago. So how should I know? But big one for the OTA for sure. And, I think another thing that they talked about was they're trying to keep organic relevant in the face of, there's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of political gridlock. There was a new administration, and they didn't know, for all they knew, that the organic program would be axed, which it wasn't. But there was worry, like no one knew what was going to happen. But what's happening now is this big, huge farm bill was supposed to be done in 2023, I think. It didn't happen, and now they keep kicking the can, and now it's looking like supposed to be out by this month, which is not going to happen. So it's going to get kicked out again. And that farm bill that's just very important for all of agriculture. That, of course, includes organic. So there's uncertainty there. So there's that. They're sort of trying to remain relevant in the midst of this gridlock. There's also a lot of new consumer expectations about different things like, regenerative for one thing. Regenerative has emerged, and that's a concern for the organic industry, that it might be getting more attention than organic, and of course there is an ROC, Regenerative Organic Certified seal, but it's not the only regen thing out there. And so there was some of that kind of stuff.
Do you think it's more, because I do know that there's definitely tension, and we've talked about this before, but then there's also opportunity, right? Because some people, of course, as you mentioned, ROC, see organic or regenerative organic is really an extension of organic. So it's an opportunity to further organic even more, right? So is there just a lot of that kind of,
for sure,
some are for, some are against?
That's right. And they did talk about how regenerative has done a good job with storytelling. It's by its nature, it has the potential to be very colorful regenerative, because it has to do with soil health, and explicitly soil health, biodiversity, all these things. Organic also deals with all of that. However, in the minds of many consumers, it's about, there's no chemicals in my food. Great, I'll buy it. That's not a very visual story. There's no chemicals in my food. The regen side that's not part of it. It's all about, it's biodiversity, it's butterflies, it's, soil health, et cetera, et cetera. And so organic is sort of thinking, there are ways for us, because organic does much of the same thing. They just hasn't been front and center. So they're sort of thinking there's some lessons there about storytelling.
Although, one of the things that we've talked a lot about with regenerative is the nutrient density side of it. That's really been coming up a lot lately, about how regenerative food is actually more nutrient dense because of the way it's cultivated. And I think that organic has already reveled in that perception for decades now, that organic food is better for you. Right. So again, it kind of feels like an extension or a shared opportunity to keep that nutrient dense conversation going, keep that better for you.
For sure. And particularly on the ROC, the Regenerative Organic Certified side, because that again, it is more explicit about I don't know that there's been studies about just organic and nutrient density. There could be. But I know there's research now that's specifically about regen, regardless of whether it's ROC and nutrient density. I think there's been a few that have hinted maybe there's a little more. I'm sure we'll hear from people, but I know there's going to be a lot more studies coming out about nutrient density and regenerative farming. And again, that since organic does incorporate a lot of regen's practices, it could be that it works for both, regardless of whether it's ROC or just organic.
One of the things that I thought was interesting, just from the notes that you sent me from Organic Week, is you mentioned that the new players on the scene, because of course organic standards is very dependent on policy, and just talking about how a lot of the members of Congress weren't around when organic came on the scene, or when some of these standards were set, which I think is really interesting to keep in mind, because we all think like, oh, it's, it's such an ingrained part of this industry.
Yeah, and there's also an element of a lot of them weren't even around for the last Farm Bill, which was 2018, I think. Yeah, it was 2018. And, what happens when, and they, of course, they managed to pass it. And there was more, apparently, according to the people at Organic Week, there was maybe a little bit more energy about getting all the, what they call orphans, all these little bits and pieces in the bill. And a lot of those people are gone. And so now those new people who don't really necessarily always understand all that goes into this massive farm bill. And so there is concern that these so-called orphans, some of these things that just will get lost through the process. And so OTA is very insistent on, we got to stay on top of all these pieces we want to make sure are in the final bill. And again, a lot of lawmakers weren't around for the last farm bill, so they're not necessarily sure how all this works.
What were some of the other big kind of goals of the OTA, or what are some of the big asks, priorities?
Some of their priorities were investments in domestic supply chains, so everything from storage and processing to infrastructure, so that farmers don't face bottlenecks. There was the Organic Imports Verification Act, and that really has to do with protecting the integrity of the seal. I think the integrity is sound when everything is grown in the United States. There is more concern if the seal is on a product from another country. And so they want to make sure that there's some money behind, this act happens so that we could be assured that when it says organic USDA and it comes from Mexico, consumers can trust it actually is organic. Let's see, they want to keep the stable funding for the NOP to keep enforcement credible. The enforcement's a big, important part of this whole program. If it weren't for enforcement, and they were in what USDA organic, well, I mean, it still would be, you'd have to follow the rules, but if no one's enforcing it, well, people ignore it. You can go to jail if you're lying. I mean, so it's a serious thing. So the enforcement, we want to make sure that continues to be beefed up. They also want to, there's an act called the Farm Workforce Modernization Act. And part of that just deals with the labor issues that are specific to organic within agriculture, because, conventional ag doesn't anymore need a whole lot of people. It's mostly done with machines and chemicals. And so there's not a ton of employees out in the field doing work. Organic is completely different. They can't use chemicals. They use machines. But the fact that there's no chemicals, that means you need to eliminate weeds. That's a huge issue. And so there's just a lot more farm labor that goes into doing organic. And they feel like, they're being treated the same, but they're not the same at all, the organic and conventionals. Organic industry wants to make sure that, particularly with this act, that maybe organic is recognized. So it's a little different over here. So we have different rules or different monies or whatever it is to deal with this separate problem within agriculture.
So I was at this event on Friday called Ripple Fest. It's put on by OSC Squared, and it's fabulous. I mean, the idea is really to bring together a lot of different leaders from our industry, change makers. It could be from brands, it could be from agricultural groups, or from, just a variety of places, to talk about some of these big picture industry problems and how can we solve them. And one of the people in attendance was telling me about work so deeply with AI and in the organic produce field, and training robots to pull weeds. And they actually have a farm, I can't remember what the crop was, where they've got robots pulling the weeds. And I just thought, but it's crazy and also, wow.
Yeah, I mean, I think I do happen to read a lot about AI, and I do think that's going to be part of there's going to be robots picking weeds for sure.
Yeah, you should get one to come to my house.
Yeah, right. I think AI this is more for conventional, but there's probably ways it could work with organic. It can pinpoint, targeting, chemicals, but not blanketing a whole field versus. And I think with organic, they still have, organic still uses different materials in farming that they just aren't dangerous chemicals, but they're going to be natural, but they're being to use that also as opposed to blanketing a whole field with something.
So this is completely a tangent, but whenever I go away on a work trip, my husband and daughter watch these. They call them videos raros, weird videos, and it's this YouTube channel with just all these bizarre things happening all over the world. And one of them was in Dubai, and it was in supermarkets, and it's a machine that you hold up your avocado to this little scanner machine, and it tells you when it's going to be ripe. Wow. And also, you do is organic or anything. You hold up your avocado and you go, he said 2 days or, 5 hours.
That's pretty amazing.
And I was just thinking, of all the things,
That's right. AI, its big thing was it led to us being able to, open our avocado.
To not have to wait for, which also brings me to another complete tangent. I did read online the other day because I was desperate for an avocado, that you can wrap it in foil and put it in the oven on really low for 10 minutes, and that will ripen your avocado. And I did it.
Really? Does it work?
I think so. I mean, it wasn't the most ripe avocado, but it definitely helped a lot.
Wow, amazing.
So maybe we don't need it. We just need a toaster oven and some tinfoil.
That's right. Yeah. I use YouTube to try to fix plumbing issues, but of course I always get them wrong. So there's water everywhere.
The water goes the other
And
way.
anything I have to fix because I'm not remotely handy, I just turn to YouTube, and maybe a third of the time I manage to pull it off, despite detailed directions on YouTube.
So, well, it sounds like the conference was fantastic. I've certainly heard a lot of feedback from people that were at Organic Week. One of the things I know that you didn't make it to this because you were flying in from the West Coast too, but I heard that the Jack Sinclair, he's always the CEO of Sprouts, gave an incredible talk
I heard the same thing.
to the crowd, just talking
It was
about
as cautious, Yeah.
yeah, the
I got
challenges in the food systems.
I couldn't get in until Monday for like
Yeah.
an hour, which was nice, but I missed the Sinclair thing. But there was that night, just walking around drinking cocktails. People were talking about it. It was pretty buzzy. He gave a good talk.
Yeah, and I know that he touched on, besides just challenges in the food system, what organic needs to do in policy, long-term relationships, helping transition more farmers. So I look forward to hearing more about that in the coming weeks as well. I'm sure that buzz is going to continue.
Yeah, well, I'm going to try to get a hold of Jack Sinclair and do another column interview with him at some point in the near future.
Yeah, well, I hope you do. You better.
Yeah.
No, great. Thanks so much, Doug. I'm glad that you were able to attend. I have only heard just incredible things about that event. So,
yeah, it was really good. And I just want to mention a few more things before.
Oh, yeah, please do. Please do.
Like there were different farmers and different brands that came up to talk. And one, I forget who this, I don't think it was it was a brand. She was talking about how baby food is like approved organic. I didn't realize this, but now half of baby food now is certified USDA organic. I had no idea. So parents expect that as a baseline now. And that's a big cultural shift that someone was saying from not that long ago. Now that literally it's like table stakes. Half of it's going to be organic, and it's probably going to grow from there. I thought that was kind of interesting. And also there was interesting talk about badge fatigue, particularly Gen Z and millennials. They don't instantly or automatically or knee-jerkedly trust the USDA seal.
Sorry. Oh. Malfunction. Sorry. I got distracted when you said knee-jerkedly.
Yeah, that's some knee-jerkedly. Yeah, that'll do it every time. But they want transparency. So apparently they like the Clean Label Project's heavy metal testing. So it's like trust is moving from regulatory seals to proof of performance. And so I think, instead of just saying this particular product passed a bunch of tests that you don't even know what they are, there's no chemicals. This is more like, I can see, I think you could even go and see what the amounts of heavy metals found in the product. So I thought that was kind of cool.
That was actually one of the things that was brought up at Ribblefest as well, from some of the consumer data that I think it was what one of the brands had brought with them, just talking about that same thing with Gen Z and that age group caring a lot about the Clean Label Project and the glyphosate-free and the heavy metal testing. So it's really interesting.
Yeah, for sure. And it was kind of similarly that some of the pushback against, in terms of this whole region organic thing, it did come up. There was some, because organic is very strict, of course, is guided by the federal government. And there is no federal sort of mandate over regen, but there was specifically talk about the outcomes based. So regen, not all of them, some of them are outcomes based. So in other words, you can't use chemicals, you can't do all these things. What it is we're going to look at your soil every year, however long it is. And over time, we'll be able to say whether you've improved the soil. And that particular mode of certification versus rules via organic, clearly some of the organic people felt like, that's a little bit too loosey-goosey. This whole, we'll measure it every year. We may still use chemicals, but it'll be these final tests that decide. And there clearly was, the people were kind of not, they were skeptical about that method.
Yeah. I don't even want to cut you off again.
Yeah, no, that's good. You want to try to think of anything else here?
No, that's great, Doug. I look forward to seeing some of the great content you're going to create for newhope.com with this experience and the stuff that you learn there. And thanks so much for being on the podcast today.
Doris, thank you for having me. Always a pleasure.
All right, be sure to rate and subscribe, and we'll see you next week.